So hello, good morning to all of you. So I start with this first session of today's, and my introduction was already given yesterday by Professor Seema Sharma. So I think you're the same participants or joining, doing the work, coursework this week, attending this FTP, Atal FTP. So today's my talk is Quest for Green Energy. So in this one, you will see some few slides, means 4-5 slides are for the introduction part for this Quest for Green Energy. It's from yesterday's. So let us move. So that I have discussed this part yesterday, that revolutionary technology waves every this in our civilization. We have textile technology, then railroad, automobiles, computer, nanotech, it came. And this has all railroad, auto, computer, nanotech, all are enabling technologies. So, and then this is the three scientists, William Shockley, John Bardeen, and Walter Brattain. They got the Nobel Prize in '56 for the invention of the transistor. And this transistor, you know, it used in the electronic revolution and compactification of the devices. And then coming to the limits of nanotechnology, this slide also I showed you yesterday, written by IBM in this was on September 28, 1989. Don Igler became the first person to manipulate and position individual atoms. Less than 2 months later, he arranged 35 genome atoms. And yesterday I mentioned that this 3 characters took for writing 22 hours that time, but today it can be done in 15 minutes. This is Professor Don Igler. So how did we get here? So new tools has been developed, and as tools changes, what we can see and do changes. So what is the overall effect of all this? So which has, this is the development. I have just fast forwarded the 3 slides. And due to this development, which has led us to uncontrolled use of natural resources. So the negative effect of the globalization has been there. So you know that today every country is trying to increase its GDP. So now global GDP is moving fast by using all the natural resources, and then global cheap labor in the Asian countries and some other countries where they have a cheap labor, they are using it, and natural resources. And then what is the output of the product? So this input, and then there is a this pollution and carbon dioxide emission gases are emitting, and then we have consumer junk materials, which are now, I think in India, many waste materials are coming for just reclaiming the metals, heavy metals, and other things, which is more also creating more problems here, pollution. So the negative effect of globalization is this. And wake up call for the world. So global warming is taking place. You know this, you might have heard in news also that this large icebergs, polar bear is in danger also. Industries are, large number of industries creating problem with this pollution, gas pollution, which has resulted in deforestation and deforestation. And then from this also we have from automobiles, some pollution is coming, some is main, a lot of pollution is coming. So what is happening? And then CFCs are there, then deforestation. Now many places you heard in news that recently in California, in Australia also, this jungles, forests are burning. Then CFCs used in refrigerators and other device cooling agents like that, that is getting problem. And greenhouse effect, all this, it is getting up pollution. And every city, if you see in the evening or in the morning for going office or returning, there is a large crowd of this. People are means public transport is very less used, but see, large number of cars has been used. And this is the early smog near the India Gate. Now, after 1 month, it will, in Roorkee already, this type of smog has started. Recently, some days it becomes like this. So what is the solution for this? So what we should do is to remove this pollution and other things. What is the answer for that one? This is the question mark I have put it. So one answer you can say, this is the lockdown. We are experiencing lockdown from last 1.5 years almost. So what is the solution? Whether lockdown is a solution of that. So this was published in Indian Express, in which complete, this was for India only, but globally, again, now many countries are putting lockdown, complete 24 hours lockdown has been imposed. And our Prime Minister, Narendra Modi, also announced a full countrywide lockdown. So, koi road par na nikle for due to this corona. So that was the effect. This lockdown was not for the stopping pollution, but for this corona pandemic. So during this period, if you see the photographs, this is the near the Connaught Place itself in Delhi. Thick smog. This was taken on November 8, 2018. This is the photograph reported by Reuters. And again, April 8, 2020. All of us we remember that lockdown was imposed around March 20 or 23rd. And this is photographing on April 8, 2020. So if you compare these two from November 8, 18 to this April, and this is a very much clear photograph. And because everything, this transport was completely suspended, and there is a clear image, pollution has been decreased. Similarly, this is the India Gate photograph of October 17, 2019, and this is for April 13, 2020. So this also shows a big change. The lockdown effect is there if you see the photographs. So, but that is, so due to this lockdown, it has become a new normal now. Now students have to going with the mask, and now slowly, I think recently some of the states have started opening the schools with standard operating procedures of the corona. And now we are also attending the classes like this lecture on webinars are conducted like this online. So this has also many advantages and some disadvantages also. So, but this is the new normal which has become due to this pandemic. So everybody needs that our Earth should be like this clean, this much clean. It should be everything, no pollution or anything. So what is then the solution to this is pollution is global warming is that green energy you have to use. So green energy means here we have to use, instead of fossil fuels or the fuel energy, we should go for some alternatives, in which we have shown from this photograph. You see, we can harness the wind energy, then the solar energy. So there are this tidal energy we can enhance and use the tidal energy and the wind, solar, and this is the hydraulic power stations, hydropower stations from where you use this is also already in use, but these things people are started using. And recently in Visakhapatnam also, that is the all over on the flat panels have been put in the sea for biggest in, I think, in Asia something, for using the energy, the solar energy. So green energy refers to the electricity that comes from renewable sources such as hydro, wind, biomass, and solar. So instead of traditional fuels like the coal and natural gases. And this is a solar project of 750 megawatt. It was in Rewa. Ultra mega solar power project was dedicated to the nation in July 10, 2020. So now slowly the pollution will be decreasing. But when you say using the solar energy, so there is a problem that during the daytime we have a solar energy, so you can use it. But what happens in the night? So in the night there is no solar power, so So that means for using that energy in the night also you require. So you have to store this energy somewhere. And with the storing of energy comes, there are different sources where you can store energy. Among them, a battery is one of them, the best one. So if you see here the energy storage systems, lithium-ion battery, lithium-ion capacitors, redox flow battery, and new some chemistry is coming up. So to store the energy converted by this wind or like solar tidal energy that has to be stored, and some mechanical energy like on roads, some people some places they have put on our staircase the piezoelectric materials, whichever the energy is coming up that is stored. And some shoes have been put with piezoelectric materials which when you move develops charge which can be stored. And I think in American Army is being using that type of source for them storing the energy. And this is another type of system. I think here also in IIT Roorkee, some of the bhavans, the hostels, they are using just storing the sun energy falling on the reflectors, solar tracking reflectors are there, which is hitting the central heating, and that hot water can be used for the mess purposes. So here it is shown for thermal storage tank and converting from turbine to electrical power. So it can be used for the mess purpose, hot water, like heating the water also. Okay, so when you talk of this, we will be talking or discussing about the storing of the energy. This is the renewable energy in the form of in a capacitors or batteries. So what is the difference between a supercapacitor and a battery? So we are everyone has using the batteries, but supercapacitors are less used for by general public, but it is being nowadays used in some vehicles in tandem with the battery also, or like a hybrid vehicles. So how do you differentiate between a supercapacitor and a battery? So supercapacitor, you can like, this athlete, he is the Jamaican athlete Usain Bolt, and he runs 100 meters in just 9.58 seconds. He has run. So what is that? This super. It's like giving a lot of energy. Energy power. Power is very high. A lot of energy is given per second. So power is very high. And second battery you can consider like this marathon runner Kipsang, which can run since 2 hours and around 45 kilometers or something like that. That is there. Okay, so this is giving a lot of energy slowly. Slowly energy is given, but here energy is given immediately in a short interval. So this has a high energy density. This is a power density is high. So you can consider that the supercapacitor is a high power density and battery is the high energy density. So hence design and development of functional materials for energy storage has attracted much attention worldwide. At present, the energy storage methods, the battery, inductive energy storage, capacitor energy. So if you compare this specific energy versus the specific power, so the capacitors are the highest specific power, but the fuel cells and batteries are having the highest specific energy, whereas gasoline is better specific energy. So that is still being used, but slowly this will take over. It will be taken over by these capacitors and batteries. So fuel cells and lithium batteries mainly convert the electrical and chemical energy through electrochemical reactions. But these materials have high energy storage density, but their charge and discharge performance are limited to a electrochemical voltage and working stability. Means charging and discharging is very slow. So like if a battery, if you give for charging, it will take 5-6 hours to charge, and then it's discharged slowly also. Whereas a supercapacitor, it is fast charging and discharging. Discharging means giving power here, delivering the power, and this is while charging, taking in the power. And moreover, their low voltage and low power density limit their applications. But nowadays the development of pulsed power technology means just within seconds you give a large energy. So I will show you next slides what are the devices using pulse power technology. Requirements are placed on the energy storage density of the components. The capacitors have advantage over that: large discharge power and high utilization efficiency, fast charge and discharge speed with respect to comparing with respect to battery it is, okay, and stable performance compared with energy storage devices. So therefore the development of this dielectric as energy storage has become the key to improve the energy storage. Okay, so these are the like the wind power generation system, the battery storage, then electric propulsion ships are there, and hybrid vehicles have come, and pulse laser power sources, hydrocarbon exploration, and electronic systems, electromagnetic guns are there where they require pulse for a very fast energy slow at a small interval of time. So supercapacitors and batteries have based vehicles, if you can see here. This is the bus which is being played by run in Himachal Pradesh, Himachal Path Parivan Nigam. This is zero emission using pure electric batteries there. And then upcoming electric cars, government is also trying to replace all the fuel cells with the, like by 2030, electric vehicles. And this type of vehicles you have already seen for last many years now. And they are using batteries. See, these batteries are also to be made with a different material because these are also very heavy, and they are just within 1 year or two they get ineffective. So that something has to be thought about that also. And so this, when you have a electric vehicles, you need the charging stations also, because the fuel, just like the petrol pumps, you have to have charging stations. And then charging for cars, similarly for the scooters, you have to have charging points in the city. Okay, so but what will be the advantage of this? There will be one more advantage of this charging stations. Like suppose you take this electric bus, this is charging. So when it is running, presently you might be seeing that the bus stops. The driver doesn't stop the bus at the bus stops. It may sometimes it will stop at the middle, sometimes at the beginning, sometimes it will just overshoot the its bus, and so that is a problem. And but when this charging type system will be made, so it will be like that, means from one station to another station. By the time the people get down, it may get charged there. So then what will happen? The buses will be standing near in the particular point only, and there will be no problem for the passengers. Similarly, if you see these flashlights, this also a charge capacitor which gives you a small, very high energy within a small time, and you get a flashlight. And we have cameras which we charge or every day or once or twice in a day. But if you have a battery which has a large charging capacity, storage energy, so we can forget once charges and forget for a month. A few years back, I think one of the companies claimed that they have made, but still I think it's not in the market. So what is the requirement? The viability is the long-term cyclability and high power density. This cyclability means this is the number of times charging and discharging takes place. So if you might have seen your this nowadays the mobile phones are coming with just polypack type of batteries, which now earlier it was you can replace the batteries. Now it comes like you cannot remove it. It's already fixed in the mobile. So once the battery is gone, you have to replace the mobile itself. So the cyclability is the how many times charging and discharging can be taken place. So what is happening? If you consider if you are charging your battery twice a day, means your mobile phone or something twice a day, so it will take in it 1 year how many times? With 700 times you have charged 700 roughly, or 800 take it. So 700 or 800 times you have charged it. So when in the factory they have checked for cyclability, so they check it for around suppose 2000, 3000 times. But if the cyclability is large, then this can run for longer time. But generally they do it for less time so that it can be replaced within 1 or 2 years. So when storing energy comes, the dielectric comes into play when it is a capacitor. So dielectrics, I think people might be you might all be knowing. So it is a insulating material or dielectric is placed between a capacitor plates. The capacitance increases, like K is the dielectric constant. So if it is a parallel plate capacitor, when you put a dielectric material, it multiplies by K. K is the dielectric constant of the material. Epsilon is the permittivity of the vacuum, or here you can take A is the area of this plate and D is the distance between this. This all you know. So if you increase the K value or the dielectric value, then you can store, capacitance will increase, and then what will happen? The energy stored is given by half QV or half CV square. So if C is increasing, that means K dielectric constant increasing. Now these are the examples of some of the materials, like vacuum has dielectric constant 1, air is 1.006, PVC like this, strontium titanate 310. So these are some of the materials. So after this we will have some materials which we have published, and then that part will be coming. So this is the number of papers related to dielectric energy storage materials over the past decade. Like if you see published papers per year for dielectric energy in storage, so it has been shooting up. So this has been shown up to 2018 itself. So people are working in this area and trying to increase the energy storage capacity, okay, of the capacitors. So when you talk of these dielectric materials, oxides with perovskite structure are well known for their ability to produce high dielectric constants. Okay, but there is a problem. However, dielectric constants higher than 1000 have always been associated with ferroelectric or relaxer properties. So people working in material science might be knowing the ferroelectric and relaxer properties of the materials. What is that? I'll just briefly say that one. So what happens in this ferroelectric or relaxer properties, in both cases, dielectric constant shows a peak as a function of temperature. That means it varies with temperature. If you see this photograph here, if you see with temperature, so the dielectric constant is increasing and shows a peak and then it starts decreasing. So if you use this type of materials, there will be some problem. The resulting temperature dependence of the dielectric constant is undesirable for many applications. Like suppose this is when you make, suppose you put like a radio, if you take, it has a tuning circuit, and suppose LCR resonance circuit is there, or any motherboard or something. There are CR filters, crystal resonators, so where capacitors are being used. Now, if when they're used, they have some for value, they take it with some tolerance. But if the temperature changes, and if it is like that, suppose you take a place where the you place the device near a engine where temperature is above 100, the capacitor will increase. And if that increases, then what will happen? The design will fail, and then the device will be malfunctioning. But if you cool it again, that will again work. So that is a problem. So you should have materials which does not show temperature dependence. That will be much better. So hence we need to develop a class of compounds with perovskite related structure which have dielectric properties very different from those of ferroelectrics or relaxers. So their high dielectric constant should show only a small or no dependence of temperature, and should have high values, should be sintered below around 1200. So energy will be saved. And then it is possible to produce inexpensive monolithic ceramic capacitors of a small size and large capacitance we can have. So going in that direction, So now you can see these are the historical ceramic capacitors also presently used in some devices. And then we have the multi-layer ceramic capacitors, which are being used in SMD, surface mount devices. And this is just the same, this much big capacitors can be put in a small value with multi-layer ceramic capacitors. But working voltage may be different. So what are these materials made of? So just I was talking, these are the standard materials like there is NPO, these are the trade names, NPO, X7R, Z5U, Z5B. So what is you see with respect to temperature, and this is the change in the capacitance with the original capacitance with temperature. So if you see this NPO material from -50 to up to like 125, it is a constant, it is not changing. The dielectric change is nil. Whereas this X7R material is plus minus 10 to 20, it is going, but Z5 is, say here from this value to this value, it changes, -40, it can go with change in temperature. And Z5B also, this blue line is showing a large change. So when you go to buy some materials, sometimes suppose some device or radio if you want to take. So if you see some same radios, some are very costly and some are very cheap. So what is happening if you use this NPO material, they are very costly. Like the Philips, suppose you Philips radio, you buy it. So if it is also now 40 years, 50 years old, still it will be functioning well. But some use this type of material, some companies like local brands, they use the cheap brands, but they have a temperature dependence like that and humidity also. So what happens if the temperature changes, then it does not tune, or sometimes due to moisture, there is a problem. Okay, now coming to this materials, how to choose these perovskite materials. What is a perovskite? This is a AbO3 type structure. Like you might be knowing, A is at the corner of the cube, B is at the center, and O is the oxygen at the faces. Okay, so when you are going to replace certain materials, suppose A material or B materials, you want to put it with different, like the doping, and then you have to take into consideration the size of that material which you are going to replace and the charge. Suppose A is a double valency 2, so you should only place with plus minus 1 with respect to that. That means if it is 2, then you can put 1, 2, or 3, up to that much you can put it. That will be better. And similarly, the size should be if it is equal to this, the A atom or the B atom, then that will be much better. But for that size, there is a Goldsmith tolerance factor, where this is Ra versus plus Ro, where Ra and Rb are the radius of the A cation, B cation, and O is the oxygen. So if you want to place this copper, suppose replace K by copper or sodium or niobium, if you put, so it will try to go to a place where it's the equivalent radius size. So what happens is, suppose if you put a big size, that means R cation by Rn is very much greater than ideal. So this type of things happens. And this is also stable, but when it is very much less than this ideal factor, then it will move around in this interstices, and that is an unstable structure. Okay, so now coming to our research areas, which we have done published also. This is from we have made the BFN. BFN is the barium, iron, niobium, oxygen is there here. So we have this is AbO3 type structure also itself. So if you see, this is the XRD pattern of these materials. So you know the difference. I assume that you know the different ceramic processes. So it has been calcined at 800 and for 3 hours, and then 850 for 3 hours. So if you see here, the XRD, so 800 for 3 hours shows some this impurity peaks, whereas when you heat it at 850 for 3 hours, you're not getting this impurity peaks that has gone. That means just increasing the temperature by 50 degree, the material has become a pure phase material. So this was also tested by this thermal analysis. You heat the material with temperature and they see what are the decompositions or reactions taking place. So that is one of the technique. Just before going, before calcination, you can do the thermal analysis and check at what temperature it is completion takes place, the reaction. Then we have done the, this is the sintered pellets. There we have taken the FESM photo. These are the FESM photographs. And this is for the sintered of at 1150 degree. This is B at 1200 degrees centigrade. C is at 1250. And this is the TM image, which are in nano size materials. So this was made by all sol gel material. Okay, so if you see this A, B and C, with change in 50 degrees centigrade heating, there is a large change in the grain sizes. So here it is small, but when you increase to 1200, large grain sizes are there. And this year it has started melting. It's like that cooking. Suppose you want to cook rice, and generally, you know, if you take the proper amount of water and rice and start in the pressure cooker, generally it will say that if you just, it goes for 3 vessels and it is properly cooked. If you put it 4 or 5 vessels, then it will melt and something will happen. So here also, if you see it is a just 1250 degrees centigrade, it has started melting. But this 1200 is much better crystallite size. So that this crystallite effect also, we can see that it is coming in the dielectric measurements, how it has been affected due to this grain size. So if you see here, the BFN ceramics sintered at 1150, 1200 and 1250, the variation of this dielectric constant and dielectric loss has been shown. So if you see the temp, at 1150, the dielectric constant and dielectric loss are this one. And at 1200, this is the high dielectric constant, it has gone, and then after that it has decreased. So that is the effect when you just 1250, it has melted, and so the dielectric constant has decreased and loss has increased here. So you can see that hitting at 1200, a very high dielectric constant of around 33,000 at 100 Hertz frequency at room temperature with dielectric loss of 0.05 for samples has been found out. So this is the best temperature at which you can heat it. And then we have done the analysis. What is the region for this high dielectric constant also? One is the grain size we have already seen. It has better grain size, larger grain size. Another, this X-ray absorption near edge structure. This analysis was done at Indore. This XNS analysis showed that this is also due to the iron moving from +2 to +3 valencies, and that has led to high dielectric constant also. This charging, this shifting that from that is the polarization increases. I think yesterday's, before my lecture, Professor Carr was showing, he has shown that different types of polarizations in dielectric materials. So from that, you can get that information. So now comparing the dielectric, which this material with other reported things, people, which other in the literature, this people has made the same material BFN by solid state reaction at heated at 1350, and they got 10,000 like this, and dielectric loss like this value. Some people made a Coulombite method, then our sol gel method other people have made, that's 1250, but we made it at 1200, and we got a very high dielectric constant of 33,000 at 100 Hertz, and at 1 kilohertz it is for 20,000, and loss was almost comparable. So our work has much better value than the reported values. So after that, we have done on the same BFN, at the barium place, we have doped a small amount of strontium, and other factors is kept constant. So let us see what is the effect of that one. So here we have done X, you have taken 0.05, 0.1 and 0.2. So what is happening, the XRD patterns, they show the same structure, monoclinic phase. But if when you see the microstructure analysis shows well grown. So this is for 0.05, this is for 0.1, and this is for 0.2. So see, when you are doping, replacing barium by strontium, so grain size is very much better in 0.05. After that, it is decreasing. And you know, when grain size is decreasing, then grain boundaries are increasing. And the grain boundaries have less energy and less dielectric constant with respect to the grains itself. So when there are a large number of grain boundaries, so dielectric constant will automatically be decreased. So this we can see in the dielectric measurement. So if you see here, the dielectric constant of 0.05 doped strontium, then 0.1, then 0.2, and these are losses. So what do you see in the 0.05, this is this one, around 83,000 dielectric constant at room temperature with dielectric loss of 0.8 at 1 kilohertz frequency. So in the BFN, it was 33,000, but small amount of strontium doping has increased its value to 83,000, that too at 1 kilohertz. So that is the effect of doping. Okay, and they are showing still some temperature dependence. And to find out what is the reason for this, this is something else. We have, this is a coal plot we have done, and for all the materials. And then from the coal plot, you can find out this, the analysis showed that the high dielectric constant is supported by the model based on barrier layer formation. That means within this, these are grains, and this in between there, that also is acting as a capacitors. So this is the equivalent circuit for this type of barrier layer formation, in which the barrier layer exists at the grain boundaries between the semiconducting grains. So you can see a large view of that one. So this is the capacitive effect at the grain boundaries, which has increased is the dielectric constant. And for that, you can go through this one, how it is the diphasic brick wall model used to describe the microstructure of polycrystalline materials. So this type of structure, you can take it like this. You can take the dielectric constant K1 dash for the grain and K2 dash for the grain boundaries, and D1 and D2, and D1 is the thickness of the grain, and then D2 is the thickness of the grain boundary. So this total grain will be dielectric constant will be the equivalent will be V1 by K1 dash GV2. That is the factors which is explained here. Okay, so that gives you a very high dielectric constant. So this is, we have just plotted at one point the percentage of strontium and with the dielectric constant. So initially it was less, and then when we have doped strontium 0.05, it is very high dielectric constant. And then it is at 0.1, 0.2, it is decreasing. And the transition temperature has been also found to decrease. So this is the what is the explanation for the transition temperature decreasing. So that is, if you see here the lattice parameters with the doping, this is the unit cell volume with x equal to 0, 48.96. When you dope with 0.05, 0.1, 0.2, so this is decreasing this volume. So when the unit cell volume decreases, the energy required to go for the transition decreases. So the transition temperature also decreases, and the Curie temperature you will achieve at lower temperature. And this decrease in volume size has been due to the addition of strontium. Means we have replaced barium by strontium, and you know strontium size is less than barium. Okay, so that has led into the decrease in the volume size. So this was prepared by us for the first time, and then it was reported. So VSFN showed enormously large dielectric constant around 83,000 at room temperature, and this is the same thing we have shown in. Now this is the final third material which we made, calcium copper titanate. So those were the showing that Curie temperature, other things. So, but when you made calcium copper titanate, and this was also made by Sol-Gel method and calcined at 800 degree for 2 hours. And here we have seen the effect of temperatures on this material. So all A, B, C, D, E, F, that is the sintering temperature, and this shows the same structure, same cubic structure here. And then F to H, what is this? F to FGH, they are heated at 1100 degrees centigrade for 3 hours, 4 hours, and 8 hours. So one was heating at these temperatures for 2 hours, and then we heating at 1100 for 3, 4, 8 hours, and then we can see what is the effect of that one. So this is the FESM photo micrographs fractured surface of calcium copper titanate. If you see here also, you see how grain size is changing, and this is 1000 degree, 1025, 1050, 1075, and 1100. So it is up to 1100 also, it has increased the size. And then we have checked for, we have gone above also, but that melted that amount. I will show you one place. But since it was melting, we didn't go higher. And then we heated the material at 1100 itself for 3, 4, 5 hours, 3 hours, 5 hours, and 8 hours, I think. So what is the effect of the grain size, this heating effect? So you can see the dielectric constant for 1000 degree heat sintered material for 2 hours is like this. Then this is the grain size for 1025. If you check it here, the dielectric constant has increased. The scales are different here, 0 to 12 and 0 to 50. So this has increased itself. Then if you go for this one, this is 1050, it has increased again. And then for 1075, again much better value. And this is for the 1100 degrees centigrade, still better. So this is the 1125, and it is showing higher value, and this has completely different structure with respect to this. So below 1100, everything was following this structure, but when you hit at 1125, this type of structure has been formed. Some melting has taken place, and you see fine grains also, crystal structure like materials, single crystal type structures you are seeing here. So this was published in Material Science cover page also. I will be coming to that figure. So here we have taken all of them together, 1025, the variation of dielectric constant. If you see that the temperature has been increased at 1100, it is the highest dielectric constant it is showing. And similarly, the loss is almost in between that value. A very high loss, it comes after 1100, after 100 degree or 125 degrees centigrade. Okay, so now it was done. If you see this thing, compare with their dielectric constant, dielectric loss, and then comparing with the structure. That is 1100 degrees, 3 hours, 4 hours, and 8 hours. How this is 3 hours, this is 4 hours, and this is 8 hours. How the dielectric constant has increased. That is plotted here. So we have got better value for 4 hours, like 1,53,816, and loss is around 0.2. So whereas others are, when you hit it for 8 hours, it decreases. So better is for the, when this is the 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours, and 8 hours, this one is the much better value. So that is in research, you have to do always trial and error, and for different variation of parameters, and you have to find out which is the best value. Okay. So here also we did the XNA studies, confirm the copper and copper. This was calcium copper titanate well materials. So there is a copper plus and copper 2+ transitions a compositional disorder in the CC2 ceramics, which is causing this very high dielectric value. And that we have done the TM and SAD. SAD is the selected area electron diffraction pattern. From that, if you see this is at 20 nanometer scale, nanostrips are visible. These nanostrip domains act as insulating barriers, which is responsible for the colloidal dielectric constant. Colloidal means very large dielectric constant, as shown by these equations. So this is the temperature variation of the dielectric constant dielectric loss. We have found that it has grown to very high value for 1100 degrees centigrade. And then we have compared the same material like the previous one. People have reported, and we have compared with the Sol-Gel, our material prepared. This is for the BFN, and this is for the calcium, copper, and strontium. All three are combined here. So when you dope with strontium, it will get, initially it was 33,000. Then we dope it with strontium, we got 83,000. And then we made another material, calcium copper titanate. This comes to 1,53,000 at room temperature, like that. Very high dielectric constants. So I was talking about these materials today. Competition was there, in which we sent that photograph. This was the photograph I showed. It came in the very first issue of 2016 January issue. It was there. It is there January, February, volume 19, number 1. So this was published in Materials Today. Afterwards, this I think February, March, this small write-up has also been published in this journal about this photograph and what is there. So this much, this far we have discussed. I started with energy storage materials, coming to the capacitors. Then how dielectric constant is related to that one. Then I have shown you our work of the dielectric constant, BFN, then strontium dot BFN, and then calcium copper titanate. Those results I have shown. And those have shown that very high dielectric constant we have achieved. But calcium copper titanate showed little bit variation with temperature also. If you see, these materials are almost constant up to 80 or 90 degrees centigrade. But if it is, and in the trade standard samples shown NPO, that was -50 to 125 degrees centigrade constant value. Here we have not done the below room temperature. From room temperature to 200 we have done, but this up to 100, you can take it as a constant value. So that can be used as a dielectric material in those capacitors. But one more thing is there that I will discuss here. So when you talk of this energy storage, so this polarization versus electric field is also there, in just like magnetic materials that has a BH curve. Here also you have a PE curve. Okay, so this is the graphical representation of polarization versus electric field loop used for energy storage calculation. So the blue area is the energy density, and this is the loss. Just like in BH curve, that is the loop area is actually the loss in the material, the heat loss. Similarly, in this one also, this is the loop portion is energy loss, but this is the saturation polarization. From that, on this much area as the energy density, which can be used for the useful purpose. So this is the then this is the EB is the breakdown voltage. Beyond that, it cannot go. The dielectric will break down. So when you talk about that, and we have discussed for ferroelectric materials, there are antiferroelectric materials also and relaxers also. So if you see this figure, this shows the typical linear dielectric material, paraelectrics, and then you have a ferroelectric type material, and this is the antiferroelectric material. We have shown on in the first quadrant, but if you see for this ferroelectric and antiferroelectric, in this third quadrant also you will get the peak like this, and the same peak will be representing in the third quadrant for the antiferroelectric materials. So if you see from these three, A, C, and E, the antiferrotic materials are showing much better energy storage type materials, okay, in comparison to the ferrotic materials or the linear dielectrics. So there corresponding relation between the relative, it is shown here. Okay. So, but for you, this is most important now for the energy storage materials. Okay, that much was for today's, and this is the same thing. Thank you. Now I can take up the questions.
Yeah. Thank you, Professor Yadav. If there are any questions, we can take questions. Any questions? If there are no questions, then I thank you for this session also. And oh, Sonu Kumar. Yeah, there is one. Yeah.
Yes, hello, sir.
Yeah.
Thanks for today's session as well as it was also like tomorrow's session.
Yeah.
Sir, my question is related with dielectric constant. Once we place that dielectric inside the capacitor, so we cannot change. And basically, actually, I don't know about calcination, how temperature increases. So, is there any relation between dielectric constant and temperature? Because you shown in graph like it increases exponentially.
Let me see where it is. You are able to see the slides?
Yes, sir.
You are asking about the relation between the dielectric constant and the temperature variation?
Yes, means like you show like it increases dielectric constant increases exponentially with temperature.
Not exponentially.
So this is just found experimentally, or is there any relationship?
Okay, there is some relationship variation with, but this depend on the materials. What type of materials? Some materials are there. Okay, let's. Okay. So this figure here is shown the variation for PLZT materials. It depends on materials to material. Okay, just let me come to, yeah, here. These are some materials like NPO, X7R, Z5U, Y5P. Different materials have different temperature dependence. Okay, so they have different, and so if you take these NPO materials, they are made of some mixture of materials such that there is no variation. So you can tune the materials or design such that there is no variation with temperature. Okay. Did you get the answer, or you want very specific?
No, actually, sir, I think I got. Actually, it's tuned for different material, right?
Yeah, this is different for different material. Like suppose if you take barium titanate, it has a Curie temperature around 120 degrees centigrade. So it will start increasing. Sometimes, no, again, there are different types of phase transitions like first order, second order. If you see this blue line, it has a broad type of transition. Do you work on material science or something? Then you might be understanding much better.
Okay, sir. And one thing, sir, basically we discuss about dielectric, like all property by its permittivity.
Permittivity, yes.
Yeah, but you told about like it's Curie curve. So definitely it has also some magnetic property, but we don't mention it here.
No, these materials, ferrotic materials, some of them show very slight magnetic properties, but they have completely different. Ferrotic materials are having PE loop like the BH curve, but this is here. This is the polarization is due to the electric field, and in magnetic materials that is due to the domain. This magnetic domain's polarization due to the magnetic field, and both the phenomena are different.
Okay, sir.
Yeah.
Any other question? Yeah, one Divya Kumari.
Yeah.
Unmute yourself.
गुड मॉर्निंग सर. गुड मॉर्निंग मैम.
Good morning.
सर मैं ये पूछना चाह रही थी कि जैसे अगर हमारा डबल पेरोक्साइड है तो हमारा टीसी कैसे बिहेव करेगा. लाइक हमारा पेरोक्साइड स्ट्रक्चर जो होता है वो AbO3 टाइप का होता है, पर जो डबल पेरोक्साइड है उसमें 2 पेरोक्साइड हो गए, A2B2O6 टाइप का स्ट्रक्चर. तो हमारा टीसी कैसे बिहेव करेगा और क्यों ऐसे बिहेव करेगा.
Okay, if you have double perovskite, suppose it is a single material, then it will show sometimes the only single peak type of. But if it is suppose 2 different materials you're mixing, like suppose you take barium titanate and this is not, I'm talking about double perovskites. But what happens, like when you BTech lab or somewhere lab, you may see also, you take 2 magnetic loops, superposition of magnetic field experiment we do for the students. So when the Helmholtz coils are placed very close and very far away or at a distance of the radius, the magnetic overlap superposition is different. Similarly, if you have 2 materials here in double perovskites, then there, if it is they have the same temperature, the Curie temperature, then it will be added up. But if it is like nearby temperatures, then you may get a flat region in between and the peaks will be there. Means that will be a superposition of the 2 Curie temperatures and their values. Okay. Means you will not get the Curie temperature at the same point. I think you got the answer or not?
Unmute yourself, Divya.
सर एक्चुअली एक्चुअली सर जो मेरा पेरोक्साइड स्ट्रक्चर है वो 2 पेरोक्साइड को मिला के नहीं बना है. ये Sr2FeNiO6 स्ट्रक्चर है. मींस A2B'B'O6 टाइप का स्ट्रक्चर है. तो सर इसमें किस तरीके का बिहेवियर होगा.
So what type of you are getting it? Let me know, then I can tell. Have you done the dielectric measurements for that?
No sir, I haven't done still.
So you will get here also the single peak, but maybe not a first order transition, you may get second order, that is the diffuse type of phase transition you will get. Okay, diffuse like the blue curve you can see in this slide. Not
sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, one question from Digvijay. Okay, I will unmute you. Just Digvijay. Okay, you are unmuted, Digvijay.
Good morning, sir. Good morning. Thank you, sir. Thank you for such a nice lecture. Sir, my question is it possible to get the ferroelectric diffuse phase transition in normal dielectrics, which is not polarized materials, simple or double perovskite ceramic? Is it possible to have some diffuse phase transition?
Yeah, if you do the doping, it may become diffuse type of transitions. Like suppose if it is that PZT material, lead zirconate titanate is there. If you that or lead titanate you take, that has a Curie temperature around 490. Now you start doping with lanthanum. We have found that that was my thesis also. Lanthanum, then you get a diffuse type of phase transitions. And this diffuse type of phase transitions comes because there a large number of microdomains are formed in the material. And these microdomains have different Curie temperature around the peak. Suppose if all of them polarize at the same temperature, then you will get a Sath peak. But if you have some microdomains which is polarizing at a different temperature, then you have a summation effect and it will be a diffuse type of phase transition. So here blue peak is still a better one. Sometimes you will get a very large broad, that is the diffusivity temperature you can calculate. I think coordinator Professor Seema Sharma, she has also done on research on PM and PT, and those were showing also better, means very diffuse type or relaxer behavior.
That means that it also comes in the normal dielectrics, which are not polarized materials, normal dielectric materials like to NiMNO6 kind of double perovskite ceramics? Is it possible?
Yeah, you can, get it. You can get it. But unless you measure, you cannot predict it like that. Means whether you will get a single. That also depends on the what type of processing is there. Same barium treated material. If you get a single crystal, you may get a single sharp peak. But if your processing is not done, temperature is not, means your density is low, like 70%, 80% only density of the theoretical XRD value, X-ray density, then also same material can show diffuse type of phase transition.
So, but this is not a structural transition, if I'm right, sir. We
No,
cannot say that.
ferroelectric materials, these are structural transitions.
But which are not non-ferroelectric materials. In the case of non-ferroelectric materials, these are not structural transitions. If the peak disperses with the frequency.
With frequency variation, that is something else you are talking again. That is the in dielectric materials. If you do the frequency variation, I have not shown any graph here with frequency. So that is the different polarizations in a ferroelectric material. There are different polarizations: ionic polarizations, atomic polarizations, then electronic polarizations, and some like charge within the grain. Some charges will be there. So when you do the frequency run, so you will see a sudden, if there is a sudden decrease from the value, then that is the charge, that is the what you call, some charges are there due to the micro moisture or some other charges at the boundaries, that will be finished, and then your atomic last decrease will be the electronic charges. So around 10 to the power 15 dielectric is frequency 10 to the power 15 hertz. You will get the only electronic transitions, which electronic polarizations. Before that, atomic and other polarizations will be there. So the different contributions will be there, which will be finishing. Means slowly decaying with respect to frequency.
Okay. So in the case of low temperature, if there is a relaxation peak, then what's the things which majorly contributed majorly in such kind of relaxation peaks or such kind of peaks, sir? In the case of low temperature, below room temperature.
Yeah, below room temperature, you means you're measuring dielectric constant, and then there is some transition you are saying.
Yes, sir.
That may be also possible, because some materials, like if you take the barium treated itself, there are 3 transitions in that one. One is below room temperature around -5 degrees or something. That is also a structural transitions. Then again around 15-20 degree, and then at 120 degree. These are different transitions that, but there is not ferroelectric to paraelectric, only ferroelectric to paraelectric at 120. But below that, there is all the transitions are in ferroelectric phase itself, but they are structural transitions. So at below room temperature also you will get, I think PM and PT and other things, they have below room temperature. So you have to decrease the temperature and do the measurements.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Professor Yadav, in the case of if like you have to find the actual and the real dielectric constant, then in that case, Digvijay is saying that what is the main contribution towards the dielectric constant of the material, then the Pundt technique can help us in that. In hysteresis measurements for positive up, negative down technique. Because that will then give the real dielectric contribution. What is the dielectric, the contribution of the different polarization? What is the dipolar polarization contribution there?
Yeah, when you do it frequency run, then only you can find out what are the different polarizations at what range you are finding out. But when you generally do at this dielectric with temperature, we are measuring at, if it is a low frequency, all the polarizations are present.
So let's say if you are working with hysteresis loops and you are working with higher temperatures, then I think it will help also with P loops.
P loops generally a very high temperature, it is not possible to do the measurement.
Yeah, that is the problem.
Yeah,
that is the problem.
Because that has to be kept in an oil for preventing
that also
breakdown.
The dielectric breakdown has to be.
So generally 100, 150, not above that, people can do it.
But what will be the real measurement which will indicate towards the contribution of the dipoles in the polarization of the material? Because at lower temperatures, we just say that all polarizations are present.
Yeah.
Like we know, generally, like we know, the dependence of
And that is space charge polarizations are there, dielectrics are ionics, are there, electronic, all are
orientational
there.
there, then you have space charge. So there is so much of thing. So how can you say what is the real contribution for that particular material? If we say that the capacitance, you have got epsilon equal to 30,000, 50,000.
Mhm. So that is space charge polarizations are coming at lower temperature. If it is the grains, you've seen the grain, different grains were present, and that what is that the fluctuations between the copper 3+ to copper 1 to copper 2 or iron 2 to iron 3. This type of space charges are available there. That is there. Means dielectric, all the contributions will be there unless you increase the very high, go to at room temperature itself. If you go very high frequency, then you can find out the value. Say, well, suppose you go around 10 to apply 10 to power 15, then whatever is present, that is we can take it as a electronic polarizations.
But right now the figure you are showing here, these are the capacitors. They have to be used at room temperatures and at 1 K. I think.
Yeah,
mostly that is the parameters we have to work upon.
Yeah. Now this about the NPO Jet5, these materials you're talking. The
Right,
figure,
yeah,
yes,
I'm talking about that.
Yeah, these are the standard materials.
They are standard capacity.
Yeah, standard trade materials. These are the trade names. But X7R, if you see the X7R is generally barium titanate doped with some other materials.
Right.
They get this.
But you also want that your the value of the dielectric constant with respect to temperature is not varying much.
Yeah, that is the NPO.
It should be very stable also for a
NPO,
temperature range.
NPO, the negative, positive, 0, that is there here.
Yeah.
So this type of material up to 125, it should be constant. Okay. So if you want to put a capacitor in a device which is placed near some engine, then you have to use this NPO type of material. Otherwise, if it is Jet5V or Y5V, the value will be changing. So it will get a problem.
So you are also saying that temperature, stable temperature
materials should be there.
Be there with respect to the change in the capacitance, and TCC and all is are very important.
Yeah, TCC is important.
And what is the operating voltage which are being used for these type of capacitors, like you are talking of ZFQ or Y?
In these devices, generally this 510 volts, not more than that.
Only 510.
Below that also.
So how do you check that for voltage? What are the experiments you are doing for that? Whether this capacitor will be working at that voltage? So that you do with VI characteristic or?
No, we are not doing that. But if you want to check how much voltage it can go, like breakdown voltage, you have to check if you want. So when I was in the industry after the PhD, like this, MLCs were prepared there. So that was the only industry there. Now it has been closed. But these were checked for some companies were asking, suppose they want to use it for 5 kilovolt. So you increase the thickness, dielectric constant and material thickness, then it will withstand. These are very high values they can withstand. There is no problem.
Okay. Means you are playing with the elementary parameters like how do you find the C0 value and what is the thickness and how that will be affecting the capacitance. Accordingly, you will be saying that, okay, fine, this particular capacitor will be going up to this voltage.
Yeah, this one.
The operating voltage will be this, the operating temperature will be this.
Yeah. So in that industry, we had in the quality control devices, all the chips were fed into one slot, and then it was checking for breakdown voltage also. So if it is getting shorted, it was removing. So it applies a certain voltage, and if it works okay, then it selects it. Otherwise, it is
But
rejected.
at a lab scale, we are not working upon anything like that. Let's say this material will be going up to this voltage, or this will be the operating voltage for this.
See, we are working with generally in the lab, we prepare 1 mm or more than that, 1.5
Yeah,
mm thickness.
Right.
So this will generally go up to 5 kilovolt, no problem. 5 kilovolt.
Yeah. Because we poll it also accordingly.
Yes.
We poll that also
If there is
accordingly.
if it is there is no such defect, it can easily withstand 5 kilovolt.
That depends upon how good materials you have made, how you have optimized it, what is the density,
Yeah.
and all
Yes.
that will just
If there is no porosity and some metallic part conducting path is not there, or crack is not there, then it will withstand that much.
So mostly, what are the how do you make the metallic electrode? You usually use
We are using this electrode paste as we are using in our lab there.
That's
Silver paste you paint it.
And polling also, you are doing the DC polling or the corona charge polling?
Generally, we are not doing the polling. Dielectric measurement is done as it is without polling.
Okay.
And for the PE loop, it's already getting polled that time.
That is not. That is
only requirement of polling comes when you are going for the piezoelectric measurements. That is required.
Yeah.
Otherwise, if you poll a sample capacitor and then do the dielectric constant and without polling also, the variation is not so much.
Okay. So thank you, Dr. Yadav, for such a nice talk yesterday and today also, and the discussions we had. Thanks a lot.